No, no, leave me. Let me talk, let me talk. No, no, leave me.
This can't be happening. It can't be happening.
We are talking about Conjuring the Devil, also known as Demon Nun. So no prizes for guessing which popular franchise this movie is aping, and this one is directed by Max Dementor. Yes, well, so what's the story? Well, it focuses on this local church in a kind of a small American town, and it's just had a new Monsignor come into this church to replace the outgoing previous priest. And this Monsignor seems to have a far more old-fashioned view on the local congregation, which primarily consists of people who traditionally the church may look down upon: transgender person, gay people, someone who does drugs, things like this, whilst the previous priest has got, you know, kind of got this congregation together and everyone kind of singing off the same hymn sheet, so to speak. Now, the congregation kind of rebels against this Monsignor, but he takes revenge. How does he do that? Well, he actually brings about the spirit of this evil nun that used to be part of the Spanish Inquisition to teach these sinners a lesson by essentially attacking them while they'll sleep in various different means that are kind of to do with what the church, at least in this movie, considers their various sins. And it's up to one of the congregation who maybe kind of gets a clue about what's going on, and maybe the kind of trying to recruit the previous priest to try and stop this Monsignor and his pet nun. So let's talk about what works. It's quite a fun premise, I'll give it that. This movie, you know, it doesn't follow the exact same kind of story like maybe a lot of these kind of nun movies tend to do in regards to trying to copy what obviously The Conjuring has done. So I'll give it props for trying to have, you know, some type of kind of historical relevance in regards to the kind of Spanish Inquisition, although obviously I think this character is completely made up. What else can I say? Okay, so I think there are some pretty good practical makeup here. So we do see a couple of kind of gore scenes in the movie, and a couple of instances where, for example, someone has got kind of quite a gory makeup to them, and it's a low-budget film, you know. But I've got to say, I think the makeup actually does a fairly good job, and to me, on a technical scale, that was probably the best thing in the film in regards to its kind of technical abilities. Some of the cast did an okay kind of job, I would suppose. I'll be honest with you, I am scraping the barrel on this one, because this one, oof, it was a bit of a rough watch, let me just say. So, let's talk about, where do I start? Okay, so the movie is way too long. The movie is way too long. It could have done with half an hour cut out. Now, the movie also likes to be particularly preachy. If you don't like identity politics in your entertainment, then this movie may not be the movie for you. In actual fact, I would say the first quarter of this film, nothing really. This is this is a longer film. It's nearly sort of 2 hours long. You know, it's the first quarter of this movie is more or less just kind of like very much a statement about, you know, different political, ideological kind of stances, obviously particularly kind of in the US, and how maybe, you know, you've got obviously kind of left-leaning versus kind of right-leaning politics and stuff like that. I found this movie to be particularly preachy because it spends so long dealing with these kind of things and almost having these arguments for you in the movie, where these parishioners are kind of literally arguing against this evil Monsignor who has these kind of what the film considers outdated, you know, views and things like this, and how it needs to be more progressive and all of this. And, you know, I always think it's a dangerous line to walk when you kind of inject politics, because realistically, you're going to cut off half of your audience if you kind of, you stray one too far one way or the other. And I've seen both left-leaning and right-leaning films kind of within the last year that I feel, both of them strayed too far in their respective, kind of leanings, and this one does the same thing, at least in this kind of portion of the movie. And I feel it really does become across as quite preachy, even if you are kind of predisposed in that kind of political mindset. I still think you'll find this movie just spends a little bit too much time kind of, discussing it, shall we say. I get that you want to set up the story, but to me it was just a little bit too long doing that. I didn't think it needed, this movie needed to be cut down, and that certainly was, people are watching this movie for that. The people are watching it for the horror elements. And I feel this movie, the filmmakers here wanted to have their say, and they were going to kind of write it into the script ultimately. So it's too long. It's maybe a little bit too political for some people, even though it's an incredibly low budget, schlocky B movie. I have to say as well, on a technical standpoint, I found this movie's just the camera work and things like that's quite bad. There are shots here where you simply are having someone talking, monologuing, having a discussion, and yet you have incredibly bad shaky cam. I mean, it's just like, it's not needed for these shots. I mean, I don't know what the rationale for it was. Get a tripod, I got one for this. Just get a tripod. I don't know if the intention was to try and have some type of effect, but it just looks incredibly cheap. I mean, if you're going to use shaky cam, it's meant to kind of like, be used in scenes of motion to kind of like give that kind of sense of kinetic energy and stuff like that. But in a dialogue scene, it just doesn't work. But the technical aspects here don't just stop there. Some of the kind of effects, I've got to say, some of them are quite funny, maybe unintentionally. So I like the makeup, but there are some kind of digital effects here that I felt could have been done better. For example, there's a few instances here where things will kind of levitate, and they've used, sort of green screen and things like that, and it obviously looks very cheap. I think you're better off just having someone throw stuff out off screen would have been a better effect, and cheaper probably, from what we've actually got. The acting, it's a low budget B movie. I actually didn't mind some of the cast here, to be honest with you, but again, some of them, and there's a couple of smaller characters here that are clearly not actors by trade, and it really shows. Some of the people who have the more main parts, I think, actually fare a bit better, but some of the smaller roles here that I'm assuming are probably friends of people involved with the film, it shows. Despite the fact that this movie has some good makeup effects, the nun herself is actually quite disappointing, I have to say, because it literally just looks like a woman in grease paint, and then it's just the way kind of the movie is shot as well. There are a couple of sequences where there's some good makeup, and yet they can't make this woman look anything like just a woman in makeup. And when she's repelled a couple of times, she'll literally just not float away. She'll just literally run up the stairs like obviously a corporeal person would. It's just very, very silly. Even kind of some of the the possession rules just seem to affect people who aren't actually to do with the congregation. So it almost kind of moves past its own rules and things like that. There are a couple of, I actually kind of enjoyed this. There's a couple of unintentionally funny scenes. Our kind of evil Monsignor, when he's essentially cursing the people with that he wants the nun to attack. He's outside their house and he's like whipping this whip, and kind of like muttering stuff. And he's doing it with like real ferocity. It looks kind of funny, I've got to say. And like no neighbours are thinking, what the hell is this guy doing? It's super silly. In a way, I think this movie probably can be enjoyed in a silly, fun, ironic kind of like way. But I think certainly if it was shorter, I think it could be enjoyed like this. But as it stands, I feel it made kind of great people that they're getting preached to. I feel like the movie's too long. You know, we didn't need to see every person. We get the idea that these people are getting attacked. I don't think there could have been ways to make this movie more punchy. We didn't need to see every attack. You know, we get that this what the nun is doing, and I think the budget. I mean, it could have been used in better effect here. It's like we have some throwaway scenes where some of the effects are quite good. Yeah, our nun is quite poor. The kind of like the makeup on her is just very basic. I just don't know. It just seems like a little bit of a slapdash movie, and when I say a little bit, I mean a lot. Realistically, I cannot really give this a good mark in any sense of the word. But like I've said, I do actually think you can, in a way, you can kind of watch this and just like watch it kind of like like you would Plan 9 from Outer Space, something along the lines of that. But objectively, it's quite poor. I'm going to be honest. I'll give it a 3 out of 10, and purely because I think some of the makeup effects are worthy of a couple of points there, and you know, I think there's a kind of an idea for a story. I just don't think it was maybe done to a particularly good standard. But one of the poorer, low budget kind of like nun-based films that we've seen since kind of the Conjuring movies. 3 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.